Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, today we're going to talk about what is that X factor that determines whether you will have a lot of self-published book sales. Now, in the past several podcasts, we've talked about several different factors and whether they did or did not influence sales. Now, the one we talked about was age, and that doesn't seem to be any factor at all, simply because a 25-year-old author could have just as much experience as a 65-year-old author who just started writing as they were retiring. So age, physical age of your person doesn't seem to be a factor. We also noted that there really doesn't seem to be much difference in terms of sales levels between women and men. So gender doesn't appear to be a factor. Also, genre, whether you write fiction or nonfiction, that doesn't appear to be a factor. And business ownership is not that big of a factor. We found that more business owners had higher sales than non-business owners, but it wasn't a dramatic amount of more sales. It was just like the next level up. So while most people in the survey had, the most popular answer was $1 to $99 of sales, business owners were tied for $1 to $99 and then $100 to $499. So they were doing a little bit better, but not dramatically better. And the most troubling aspect that we talked about was self-publishing experience. In other words, if you publish more books, I didn't find that statistically you made more money just because you had more books on the market. Everybody in all of the experience levels, whether that was one book up to 10 plus books, all of them, the most popular answer was $1 to $99. So that doesn't appear to be a big factor either. So what can we attribute to self-published sales of your book? What is going to determine whether you are successful or not at that? I will tell you that the biggest determinant of whether you make self-published sales is you. You are the biggest factor. Now, what I mean by that, and especially as we're talking about self-publishing, a lot of self-published authors serve very niche markets. So you may not have that large of a marketplace to serve. So even if you were the expert or the premier fiction author within your particular small genre, you might not make enough sales to sustain your business or your lifestyle, just because it's such a small niche. So this really takes a good deal of self-awareness and marketplace awareness, and whether you can afford to serve that market. So I'm not saying you should go for a big general topic area or niche, but when you look at the markets you want to serve, you need to look at how big they are to see if they can make enough sales, if you can even get enough sales from that. And that's kind of hard to do. It's really, really hard to do. But you have to be aware that and the way to look at that, because some of these markets may be very, very difficult to assess in terms of whether there's enough readers in it. What you can kind of tell whether it's a big or small niche is go over to Amazon and type in your topic or your specialty genre and see how many books there are out there. If there aren't that many, it's probably not that big of a niche. Now, that's discouraging for a lot of people because they want to be the big fish in the small pond. But sometimes that small pond is just too small. So if you look at your topic and you find that there's not a lot of books out there, then it's probably a very small niche. Now you might say, well, this is my specialty. I am very emotionally invested into this market or this niche, and that's fine. You know what? That is absolutely okay. I have books like that too. And in the one niche where I still sell the books of that title in that niche, it's a very small niche. Probably, I would say I looked at maybe there's 100 books, grand total, and some of those are not even specifically dedicated to the topic. So I realize it's a very small niche, and it's done pretty well for me, but I realize that there's a limit. So I realize also that this is my specialty, and that I'm not just going to select a different market or a topic that I don't know anything about or that I am not qualified to discuss or write about or write within. So again, it takes some real awareness of both yourself and your market to decide whether you are capable of serving that market and it's capable of sustaining you. Now, the one thing I want you to avoid when I say that you are the X factor is that you don't blame yourself for low self-published sales. A lot of self-published books will only sell a couple hundred copies within their entire lifetime. And I don't want you to get down about that. One, because as we just talked about, some of these niches are very small. And you also have to remember that you are in a highly competitive marketplace. I'm not just talking for books on Amazon and books within your topic or niche or genre. I'm not talking just about that. I am talking about content competition from everything else out there. YouTube videos, online courses, gaming channels, streaming videos and shows. The list is just about endless. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as I think I've mentioned in other places. Your competition is stiff. So don't blame yourself. Okay, that's not what I'm telling you, that you are the X factor. I'm not telling you to blame yourself, and I don't want you to go chasing all these social media strategies and stuff to the point where you just become exhausted because it's constantly changing and the competition is just going to increase. So it takes some awareness too of what is going to actually be successful for your particular market. So realize that you are special and your followers are special, and that is what's really going to help you be successful, is that connection that you have, that you specifically have with your followers and readers. So I hope you found that informative or at least reassuring. And if you have, I would appreciate it if you would go over to iTunes and give the Heidi Thorne Show a nice rating and review. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the Heidi Thorne Show on iTunes. And I'm also on Stitcher and Podbean. The video podcast is on YouTube. You just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel. And if you want to listen to the podcast on your Alexa device, you just have to use the AnyPod skill to listen to the Heidi Thorne Show. I would also appreciate it if you would share this video or the podcast with your friends on social media. My self-published books are available on Amazon. You just have to search for my Heidi Thorne author page. And my audiobooks are available on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. If you'd like to connect with me, my website is simply HeidiThorne.com. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode. And in the meantime, have a great day.